Most people walk past the produce section, pay $4 for 3 peaches, and never once think about where that fruit actually came from. They assume growing your own would mean owning acres of land, decades of patience, and a tractor. None of that is true anymore. Thanks to a wave of genetic dwarfing in modern agriculture, you can now grow full-sized, full-flavored fruit on trees small enough to live their entire life in a pot on your patio. We're not talking about sad, ornamental mini trees that never produce anything. We're talking about real fruit, in real quantities, from trees that top out at 4 to 6 feet tall. Today we're counting down 15 high-yield dwarf fruit trees built specifically for container life, the exact pot sizes, the soil mixes, the watering rules, and the harvest windows for each one. Stay with us, because the tree sitting at number 1 produces fruit so consistently that commercial growers have started planting it specifically because it's nearly impossible to mess up. Let's get into it. 14. Dwarf pineapple guava, Patio. At number 14 is a tree most American gardeners have never heard of, despite it being one of the easiest fruiting plants you can own, the dwarf pineapple guava, also called Patio. This tree is practically maintenance-free once established. It tolerates drought, poor soil, and even light frost, which makes it one of the most forgiving fruit trees on this entire list. Its gray-green leaves are attractive year-round, and in late spring it produces edible flowers with sweet, fleshy petals before the fruit even forms. Most people don't realize you can eat the blossoms too. A 7 to 10 gallon pot is plenty, since the root system stays relatively compact. Use a standard well-draining potting mix, place it in full sun to light shade, and water moderately. This tree actually performs worse if it's overwatered. By autumn, the small oval fruits ripen and develop a flavor that genuinely tastes like a blend of pineapple, guava, and mint. Most varieties need a second tree nearby for reliable pollination, so if you have the room, a pair of pots side by side dramatically increases your yield. 13. Dwarf key lime. Coming in at number 13 is the tiny, intensely aromatic tree behind every great key lime pie, the dwarf key lime. Unlike standard limes, key lime trees stay genuinely small and produce fruit in heavy clusters, often dozens at a time on a tree barely 4 feet tall. The catch is that this variety is far less cold-hardy than the Maya lemon, so if you live anywhere that drops below freezing, this tree needs to come indoors for winter. Plant it in a breathable 10-gallon fabric grow bag filled with a fast-draining citrus mix, and place it in the sunniest, most sheltered spot on your property. Key limes are heavy feeders during the growing season, so apply a citrus fertilizer every 4 to 6 weeks from spring through late summer. Harvest the limes once they turn from green to a pale yellow-green, which is when the juice content and aromatic oils peak. Most people pick them too early and miss out on the tree's true flavor potential. Number 12. Dwarf banana, Cavendish. At number 12 is a plant most people are shocked to learn can live in a pot at all, the dwarf Cavendish banana. While a standard banana plant can tower past 20 feet, the dwarf Cavendish variety tops out around 6 feet, while still producing full clusters of real, edible bananas. Technically, this isn't even a tree, it's the largest herbaceous plant in the world, with a soft, fleshy false stem instead of true wood. That's part of why it grows so explosively fast once it's happy. You'll need a heavy 15-gallon hard plastic container, since the plant develops a large underground culm and a heavy leaf canopy that can tip over in wind. Use a rich, slightly acidic potting mix loaded with compost, and place the pot in the hottest, sunniest spot available. Banana plants are nearly 80% water by composition, so daily deep watering through summer is non-negotiable. From planting to harvest typically takes 12 to 15 months, but once the flower stalk swells into a full bunch of green bananas, you simply cut the entire stalk and let it ripen indoors, just like fruit shipped from a warehouse. 11. Dwarf fig, Little Miss Figgy. Sitting at number 11 is one of the single best fruit trees for small spaces, the genetic dwarf fig, specifically the Little Miss Figgy variety. Standard fig trees can reach 30 feet and develop roots aggressive enough to crack concrete, but this dwarf mutation stays compact while still producing a genuinely heavy crop of sticky, gourmet figures. The trick with figs is counterintuitive. They actually fruit better when their roots are restricted, so don't be tempted to upgrade to an oversized pot. A tight 5-gallon englazed terracotta container is ideal, since the porous clay pulls excess moisture away from the roots and physically limits root expansion, which redirects the plant's energy into fruit instead of growth. Fill it with a lean, sandy soil mix. Place it in full blazing sun, and let the soil dry out completely between waterings. Overwatering causes the fruit to split before it ripens. By late summer, the figs will droop and soften, often releasing a small bead of natural sugar from the base, which is your sign they are ready to twist off the branch. 10. Dwarf pomegranate. At number 10 is an ancient fruit that performs beautifully in a modern container, the dwarf pomegranate. This compact shrub produces the same fiery red trumpet-shaped flowers as its full-size relatives, followed by miniature jewel-toned fruit packed with crimson areoles. Because pomegranates evolved in rocky, near-barren landscapes, they are genuinely one of the most drought-tolerant fruiting plants you can own. Use a heavy, englazed 5-gallon terracotta pot and a gritty, desert-style soil mix amended with crushed gravel for fast drainage. Place it in the most punishing full-sun spot your patio offers, and treat the watering schedule like you would a cactus. Let the soil dry out almost completely, even to the point of slight leaf droop, before giving it a deep soak. A single handful of bone meal in early spring is usually all the fertilizer it needs. By late autumn, the leathery red fruit will begin to split slightly on the branch, which is your cue to harvest and crack them open for the juice-packed areoles inside. 8. Dwarf bush cherry. Coming in at number 8 is proof that you don't need a decade of patience to grow cherries. The dwarf bush cherry. Traditional cherry trees can take 10 years to produce their first real harvest, but modern dwarf bush varieties fruit far faster and stay small enough to net against birds by hand. Most varieties are also self-fruitful, meaning you don't need a second tree nearby for pollination, which is a major advantage over standard sweet cherry trees. A wide 7-gallon fabric grow bag works perfectly, since the root system is shallow and fibrous rather than deep. Use a slightly acidic, well-draining soil mix. Keep the soil consistently moist once blossoms drop and fruit begins to set, and apply a slow-release organic fertilizer just once in early spring. These compact bushes max out around 4 feet tall, so harvest is as simple as stepping outside with a basket by midsummer. You'll have a crop of tart, deep red cherries perfect for baking. 7. Dwarf blueberry. At number 7 is a fruit that genuinely grows better in a pot than in the ground for most home gardeners, the dwarf blueberry. Blueberries demand extremely acidic soil, somewhere between pH 4.0 and 5.0, which most backyard dirt simply doesn't provide. Trying to amend an entire garden bed to that acidity is a losing battle, but controlling the soil inside a single container is easy. Use a 5-gallon breathable fabric grow bag filled with a specialized acidic mix made primarily of peat moss and pine bark. Fine standard potting soil will kill this plant. Water daily during summer using rainwater if possible, since the minerals in tap water can gradually raise the soil's pH and undo all your work. Feed twice a season with an acid-loving fertilizer formulated for plants like azaleas. By midsummer, the bush fills with small white blossoms that transform into dusty, sweet tart berries. Ripe ones roll off the stem into your palm with zero resistance. 6. Dwarf thornless blackberry. At number 6 is the upgraded version of a backyard classic, the dwarf thornless blackberry. Traditional blackberry brambles are aggressive, thorny, and will happily take over an entire yard if left unchecked. This dwarf variety solves both problems at once. It stays compact, grows as a tidy bush rather than sprawling vines, and is completely thornless, meaning you can harvest with bare hands. A wide 5-gallon pot filled with a slightly acidic, well-aerated soil mix is all this plant needs. Give it at least 8 hours of direct sun daily, water deeply and consistently through summer, and feed monthly with a balanced organic fertilizer during the growing season. By midsummer, the bush fills with plump, jet black berries perfect for jams, cobblers, and eating straight off the branch. We're halfway through the list. Of the 9 trees we've covered so far, Maya lemon, pineapple guava, key lime, dwarf banana, dwarf fig, dwarf pomegranate, mulberry, bush cherry, and blueberry. Which one would actually fit on your patio right now? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Now let's move into the final 6. because these are the heaviest producers on the entire list. 5. Dwarf Guava Ruby Supreme. At number 5 is a fast-growing tropical shrub that rewards patience with an overwhelming amount of fruit. The dwarf guava, specifically compact varieties like Ruby Supreme. This plant grows fast and wide, which means root control matters just as much as soil quality. A 10-gallon breathable fabric grow bag naturally air prunes the roots, keeping the bush from choking itself inside the container while still allowing vigorous growth above the soil. Fill the bag with a rich, well-draining mix amended with lime castings, and place it in the hottest, most sun-drenched part of your patio. Guava genuinely needs intense heat to develop its full sugar content. Water heavily every 2 days during peak summer to keep the fruit swelling, and apply a phosphorus-rich fertilizer in early spring to fuel blooming. By late summer, the green skin blushes to pale yellow and the entire patio fills with an unmistakably sweet, musky perfume that scent alone tells you harvest time has arrived. 4. Dwarf Nectarine. At number 4 is proof that stone fruit doesn't require a full-sized orchard tree. The genetic dwarf nectarine. This isn't a standard tree grafted onto dwarfing rootstock. It's a true genetic mutation that creates an unusually compact, dense tree topping out around 5 feet, while still producing full-sized, full-flavored nectarines. The dense, short branching also naturally shades the developing fruit, which helps prevent sunscald during peak summer heat. Choose a heavy 15-gallon pot, since a top-heavy, fruit-laden tree in a lightweight container is a recipe for tipping over in wind. Use a well-draining mix amended with compost, plant a bare-root dormant tree in early spring, and place it in full sun. Watering consistency matters enormously here. If the soil dries out even once during fruit set, the tree will panic and drop its unripe fruit. Feed once in early spring with a slow-release fruit tree fertilizer, and by mid to late summer, you'll be harvesting fruit that's deeply blushed red and yields slightly to gentle pressure. 3. Dwarf Mango. At number 3 is a tree that sounds impossible until you actually try it. The dwarf mango, specifically ultra-compact varieties like Pickering or Condo mango. Mango trees naturally develop a long, deep taproot, so depth matters more than width here. A deep 15-gallon container gives the root system room to anchor properly. Always buy a grafted dwarf tree rather than a seed from a grocery store mango, since seed-grown trees revert to 6-foot wild genetics and rarely fruit reliably in a container. Use a well-draining citrus or palm soil mix, and place the pot in the most intense full-sun location available. Mango roots despise sitting in water, so let the soil dry out significantly between deep soakings to avoid root rot. Feed monthly with a high-potassium fertilizer during active growth. By late summer, the fruit is ready when the skin blushes red and yellow and releases that unmistakable tropical perfume. Cut it free with shears rather than pulling, which can damage the branch. 2. Dwarf Star Fruit Carambola. At number 2 is a tropical tree that turns heads the moment it fruits. The dwarf Hawaiian carambola, better known as star fruit. This evergreen produces clusters of waxy yellow fruit that, when sliced, reveal a perfect 5-point star shape, genuinely one of the most photogenic harvests you can grow at home. Its wide, thirsty root system means consistent moisture matters more than almost anything else on this list. Use a 15-gallon heavy-duty pot filled with a slightly acidic, well-composted mix that holds moisture while still draining excess water. Always buy a grafted dwarf tree, since seed-grown star fruit produces unpredictable, often poor-quality fruit. Place it in full sun but shelter it from harsh wind. Water heavily and frequently, and feed every 4 weeks with a balanced organic fertilizer. A matured dwarf tree can produce multiple flushes of fruit through late summer and autumn harvest once the ridges turn entirely golden yellow, then slice horizontally to reveal the signature star. 1. Dwarf Kumquat, Nagami. And the number 1 spot, the most reliable high-yield container fruit tree on this entire list, goes to the dwarf kumquat, specifically the cold-hardy Nagami variety. What earns kumquat the top spot is consistency. It's one of the most cold-hardy citrus species that exists, capable of surviving brief temperature drops into the high teens without permanent damage, and it fruits heavily and reliably even for beginners who tend to under or overcare for other citrus. Commercial growers actually favor this variety for exactly that reason. It forgives mistakes that would kill a lemon or lime tree. Use a deep 7-gallon heavy pot to protect the sensitive taproot from sudden cold snaps, filled with a citrus-specific mix that balances moisture retention with fast drainage. Buy a grafted nursery tree, place it in full sun from dawn to dusk, and water deeply every few days during summer. Feed every 2 months with a citrus fertilizer rich in zinc and magnesium. Remarkably, kumquats ripen in the dead of winter, giving you a vivid burst of fresh orange fruit exactly when the rest of your garden is dormant. Snip the fruit individually and eat them whole. Skin and all the sweet peel and tart juice balance each other perfectly in one bite.